So all of you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So we now discuss the difference, okay, where what happens when we move data mining onto the big data. So the outline of my presentation will be problems with sequential data mining techniques, okay. Until now, whatever the algorithms we have looked, okay, a priori, decision tree, then k-means, okay, the basic ones that we have looked, they are sequential by nature, okay. So what is the problem with them? Then we discuss some real world applications, okay, where we have to look at big data. So now next point is big data analysis, why we have to move from sequential to parallel data mining techniques, followed by parallel a priori and parallel FP growth algorithms, okay. We haven't covered parallel FP growth in the class 1. We will be covering this now in this class, okay. So the first one is problem with the sequential data mining technique. So the first problem with the sequential data mining techniques is scalability, okay. That is, assume you have some data on which you have applied your model, okay, mining algorithm, and you are extracting the data. Now if you replace the data with a very large data, okay, then what happens is the sequential algorithms can't run and they generate some insufficient memory error, okay. So this is the problem, this is called the scalability problem, okay. Sequential algorithms can't scale. The next one is fault tolerant problem. That is, if there is any failure in CPUs or GPUs or this, the sequential algorithms, okay, they break, they stop working. You have to redo from the beginning, okay, which is a computationally expensive stuff, expensive process. So these are the two fundamental problems of sequential data mining techniques, okay. So one is the scalability, the other one is fault tolerant problem. So we will discuss fault tolerant problem in detail, okay. We use the following example. So you know Society 5.0, this is the Japanese government initiative, okay. So currently what we have is, for each application, okay, we have some cloud, okay, where we push data into the cloud and we do whatever data mining or machine learning things that are going to happen, okay. This is the typical architecture in which we are doing the research now. But they want to go beyond. So the concept of beyond is Society 5.0, okay. So what happens is, all kinds of the data generated by real world applications, okay, like traffic data, medical data, whatever the data, the entire data will be pushed into the cloud, okay, and the data exists in the cloud. And the data mining, okay, this huge data is big data, okay. So in this data we apply data mining techniques, and whatever the knowledge we get, we will be disseminating back to the users, okay. So this is called Society 5.0. And we in University of Tokyo, where I used to work previously, we have this Society 5.0 club, which is very huge one, okay. So this is how it looks like, okay. So one side you have lots of CPUs, okay. How does the society cloud, okay, or you can think how any cloud service will work. You have millions of CPUs, okay. Then you have millions of disks and GPUs, okay. Why did I kept GPUs here wrong? Sorry, my bad. So we have millions of CPUs, GPUs and disks which are communicating with each other, okay, through PCIe slots or bus basically, okay. This is how the cloud looks like, okay. Data center or cloud looks like. Now what happens is, in this cloud these CPUs and GPUs keep on failing. Okay, and when these CPUs and GPUs keeps on failing, what happens is the data mining algorithm that is running on a particular CPU or using particular data disk have to stop because they cannot work. So what happens is again you have to redo the entire process, which is computationally expensive and also a time consuming job. So what happens, what we want to do is we want to parallelize the things. Okay, so even if there is a failure in CPUs, GPUs on this, your algorithm don't stop. It keeps on computing and gives you the results at the end. So this is the objective of big data analytics. Okay, that is fault tolerance and scalability. You want to achieve these two things. So now the important question is, can we handle data mining algorithms that are tolerant to CPU, GPU, and disk failures? So this is the motivation for big data analytics. Okay. So now we look at the infrastructures for big data analytics. So in the first class, we have looked at it, right? We looked at this black box model. If there is a function, we convert the function into a model and an algorithm. Okay. Hello, yeah, anything?
Yes.
Now we have the model. Okay. And we have the algorithm.
Yes.
Model is mathematical, right? Okay. So it has nothing to do with the data. Remember it. Okay. Because the scale model does not talk about the scale of the data. Okay. But the algorithms, okay, a priori, eclat, FP growth. Okay, we discussed about a priori, right?
Yes.
So these algorithms depend on the scale of the data. If you are giving huge amount of data, the algorithms run out of memory.
Yes.
This is the problem. Okay. So what happens is these algorithms, which are sequential by nature. So what does the a priori and these algorithms think? There is a centralized database, okay, running on a single machine. So this is the implicit assumption of these sequential algorithms. But so because of this implicit assumption, what happens is if I want to pass like 1 terabyte of data, okay, you don't have 1 terabyte of RAM to store the data. Okay.
Yes.
So what happens is you get error. Similarly, if your CPU or disk fails to give you the data, the algorithm stops. It will say error. So these two problems will be encountered. Note, please note that big data has nothing to do with the mathematical models. Okay, that is the power of mathematics. Everything that you do, it comes only in the form of algorithms. Only at the algorithms it will be. Models are not prone to big data. K-means, it does not prone to big data, okay? But if you are writing an algorithm for K-means, that is subjective to big data, okay? You have to ensure your algorithm scales to terabytes of data. But model has nothing to do with the data, okay? That's why in the first class, when I talked about data scientist, I told you, data scientist will never look at the data, okay? He never looks at the scale, he never looks at the attributes in the data. He only visualizes the distribution, okay? Like average is good, median is good, how is the data is distributed in that. He only looks at that. He doesn't look at other things. That's the power of mathematics. You only build models based on the distributions and the nature of the data. Algorithms come at the scale of the data. Sorry. So now you are the, so now in the big data, okay, you have multiple CPUs, multiple disks. How to efficiently use this cloud is done using popularly 3 big data frameworks. The first one is Hadoop framework, The next one is Spark framework, and the one that is coming recently is Flink. Okay. The thing is Hadoop and Spark, they accept transactional databases. Remember it, okay? So you can assume data can be the model as multiple times scan can be done on these databases, okay? Whereas Flink does not assume data as transactional database. Flink assumes data as data streams, okay? So the relationship is Hadoop assumes data exists mostly in the form of transactional databases. Flink assumes data naturally exists in the form of data streams. Okay, in between this Hadoop and Flink lies the Spark. It assumes data can exist as transactional databases. Data can exist as, stream. So the thing is, these two are extremes, okay? They are perfect. This is in between. So the performance of Spark is also in between. Spark loses to Flink when you consider data as stream, okay? At the same time, if your data is very huge, okay, terabytes to petabytes of data, Hadoop can efficiently work. Spark can't because you don't have petabytes of memory, so the algorithms fail. Okay, but if you have a reasonable amount of data, okay, maybe in gigabytes of data, then Spark, which is in-memory computing, can outperform Hadoop. Okay, only under limited data conditions. If you are assuming unlimited data conditions, Spark can't scale. Remember it. Spark is faster than Hadoop because it uses in-memory computation, but it is not as scalable as Hadoop. Okay, and so these are the mechanisms with which data is stored. But how do these architectures process the data? They have the commonality. They use map-reduce computation. I think Paik Sensei has talked about map-reduce computation, so I am not going to talk about these frameworks in detail in this, okay? I assume you guys already know, and we will look at how these frameworks and map-reduce computation are used in data mining algorithms to mine interesting patterns parallelly. So this is the parallel a priori algorithm. Okay. So first what we try to do is, okay, you can see here, okay. Can you guys see
Yes.
my cursor? Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So in a priori algorithm, okay, what we have done, we have only taken this database, right? This whole database. Okay. And from this database, we have extracted a priori, we have extracted frequent patterns. Okay. Now in parallel a priori, what we assume is this single database is divided into multiple sub databases. Okay. In this case, we are dividing the whole data into 3 sub databases. Each sub database may lie in different computers, okay, different machines or in different disks. Okay, they need not be together. So they are in different, okay. For example, T1, T2, T3 transactions are in one machine. T5, T4, T5, T6 are in one machine. T7, T8, T9. These are in another machine, okay. So we have divided 9 transactions into 3 different computers. They can be, okay, they need not be sequential, okay. They can be random also, no problem. Okay, once we have it, now what we try to do is we do a mapping function. Okay, we apply mapper. So what mapper will do is in each machine it will count how many times each item has appeared, okay, in the form of key value pair. Okay, so key is the item, value is the frequency. Okay, so you can see here I1 appears 2 times. Okay, I1 is 2. How many times I2 has appeared? I1 has appeared in T1, no T2, but in T3. So we say I2 is 2.
2.
Similarly, I3 is 3, I5 is 1. Okay. Now we go to the second machine. I1 appeared in 2 transactions. I2 has appeared in 3 transactions. I3 has appeared in 1 transaction. Similarly, I4 has appeared in 1 transaction. I5 has appeared in 1 transaction. Okay. This is more like word count, right? You are simply counting the frequencies of the words. Quite
Yes.
simple. Once you have done this count, then we do the same for the third machine. Once we have it, we shuffle and exchange the counts. Okay, so we say I1 has appeared in 2, 2, 2. So these are the counts in various machines. Similarly, we do it. And then we apply the reducer and we get the final frequencies of the items. Okay, so here we have the counts. So you can see here I4, I1, I4, I2, I5, I3. So we got these frequent items. Okay, now what we do is we perform a join on these frequent items and then we go back to databases. Okay, now tell me how many times I1 and I2 have appeared. In first machine, how many times I1 and I2 have appeared?
In previous case, 2.
2. How?
No, I saw
In one machine, how many transactions can in machine 1? Okay, this is machine 1. So
okay.
tell me how many transactions contain I1 and I2?
Oh,
3, 6.
It's 1. Only T1 contains the items I1 and I2.
4.
Why 4? It's
T
only
6,
1.
T7. Oh, yeah.
No. In Mac, it's very hard to type. I have changed my machine. Let me close it and okay, let me do it here. Let us assume this is this is machine 1. Okay, then this is machine 3. This is machine 2. Okay, we have the data. We have divided the data into 3 machines. Machine 1 to machine 3. Now in machine 1, how many times I1 and I2 have appeared?
3.
4.
What?
I want 2 and I2 for 2 times.
No. Let me type here. Okay, tell me. I think now you can see the question clearly.
Oh, that's mean I1 is 2 transaction.
I am
And
saying I1, see, we already found frequent items, right? These are frequent items, right?
yes.
Okay, now I perform a join. Okay, I am generating C2. That is L1 times L1. Okay, so first one will be I1 times I2. That is, you get I1, I2. This is the pattern. C2, sorry. C2 is L1 comma A. You forgot. Number of transactions contain I1 and I2. Look at the first transaction here. Okay. T1 contains I1 and I2.
Yeah.
Okay. Do T2 contains I1 and I2?
No.
No.
Do T3 contain I1 and I2?
No.
So how many transactions contain I1 and I2?
Oh, one.
One.
One. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens is I1, I2 frequency is 1. Okay. So this is key. This is value.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Similarly, now tell me for machine 2. What is the frequency of I1 and I2 in machine 2?
2.
2.
Okay. Now in machine 3, how much?
It's 1.
Okay. Now, okay, we do it for other item sets also. Okay. So
Oh,
you get the key, you get the value. Clear? For each machine. Now tell me for I1 and I3. This one I have told you, right? Now tell me for I1 and I3. Now tell me for I1 and I5. Tell me for I1 and I5. I5 is here. Yeah, 2 is there.
machine 1, 1.
Just a minute. No, wait, just a minute. Tell me for I3, I5.
It's 1.
One.
In machine 1, 1. Okay.
Okay.
Now tell me for machine 2.
0.
0.
For machine 3,
0.
0.
0. Okay. Now this is clear, right?
Yes.
So we got to intermediate values. Okay. These are intermediate values using mapper. Okay. Now what we do is we do shuffle and exchange. Okay. So these values will be shuffled. So how do we shuffle? We say like this: I1, I2, which is the key. Okay. Followed by 1, 2, 1, which is 5. Okay. This can go in one machine. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Any doubts? No. We see these are in different machines. We simply combine with key value pairs. Next one is for I3, what will happen? Someone tell me for I3 and I5.
1, 0, 0.
1. Okay. So from this, what happens is at the end of the reduce, we convert this into 1 to this becomes 4.
Yes.
This becomes 1.
1.
Okay.
Okay.
So if the minimum support is 2, this is infrequent. Okay. So this gets deleted. This will be deleted. We get I1, I2 as the frequent pattern. Then again we do the same thing. We perform a join and then we generate I1, I2, I3. Again we keep on searching and we continue this process until no more candidate item sets or frequent item sets can be generated.
Then,
Yeah, please ask me.
first of all, we take a single one, I1, I2, and count the frequency.
Yes,
Then we take 2 items.
yes,
Then count the frequency and increasing.
yes. Just a minute. Can you see the class 1 slide?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how a priori works, right? I have told you, if you have the transactional database,
Yes.
first one is we take C1, okay? We scan the database, we measure the supports of all the items in the data, okay?
Yes.
Then we prune using minimum support count and then generate frequent one item sets, okay?
Okay.
Then after generating frequent item sets, one item sets, we do the join. L1
Yes.
join L2. Okay. So we generate A, B, A, C, so on.
Yes.
Then we scan it again. Again, we scan the database. Okay. And we get frequent items L2. So this is what a priori is. A priori is a breadth first search algorithm. I have also told you, right? A priori.
Yes.
It does A, B, C, D. Then it does A, B, A, C, A, D, something. Okay. So the item set length increases one after the other. So this is how a priori does. Okay. So now the same thing is here. Can you see the current slide?
Yes. Yes.
Parallel a priori.
Yes.
Okay. So the same thing, right? First, what we have done, we have found frequent one items, right? Frequent items.
Yes.
You see, these are frequent items.
Yes.
Next, what we did, we have performed the same step and we have found frequent two item sets.
Yes.
Once we find them, then we go for frequent three item sets.
3 items.
Then frequent four item sets, frequent five. So the steps remain the same. Count, shuffle, and merge. So this is the basic a priori algorithm. Clear? Any doubts in understanding this one?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no doubts, right? Okay, fine. Now we will go to a different topic. Okay. We have understood this one, right? We have a data mining model which has input and output. How many of you still did not understand this concept? Please let me know. Do everyone understands?
Yes.
So what happens is when you read any paper or when you see any publications, okay, they project that the model is perfect and there are no drawbacks in the model, okay, but the reality is each model has several weaknesses.
Yes.
Okay. Now okay, if you accept it, now tell me the problems of a priori algorithm. Think and tell me what are the problems of a priori. Let me. Can you see my browser?
No.
Okay, just a minute. Did you share? Now you can see my desktop, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let me take you to. Can you see this paper title?
Yes.
Okay. Towards efficient mining of periodic frequent patterns in transactional database. Okay. From this, can you identify the limitations of this paper? You can go to class 1 slides Okay. Look at the class 1 slides where I talked about types of data, nature of data, and so on, forms of data. Based on this, can you identify any limitation of this work? Let me go to class. Okay. You have seen this. Have you guys gone through the slides at least? You have seen this one, right?
Yes.
If the input is transactional database, okay, you get the model. If I change the input from transactional database to streams, the data will not work.
What?
The model will not work, right?
Yes.
I told you why it will not work. What are the properties of a stream?
It will continuous data,
Then,
and the transactional data is fixed amount of data.
okay, that is
Then,
correct. Stream is you can have only single scan.
yes.
Okay, so
And
if you have single scan, the
yes,
model will not work.
work, yes.
Okay. Now look at this paper. What am I saying here?
Transactional data, yes.
Okay, it means my model works only for
Transactional,
transactional databases. It
yes,
can't handle stream.
yes.
Okay, and one
Okay.
more thing is I am saying transactional. There is no timestamp I am taking. Okay, I am not taking time here. I am saying periodic, but I am not taking time
Yes.
because I am considering TIDs as time. Okay, these are the limitations. Now over a period, let me faster. Now you see here, temporal databases. Okay, I moved from transactional to temporal databases. So this is the problem. See, discovering periodic patterns in non-uniform temporal database means here I am taking time. So when you see the title of the paper itself, you can tell the weaknesses of the paper. Oh, he is only working for transactional databases. He is not working on streams. Okay. So now the thing is, what we try to do is, if somebody has published this paper, what I try to do is, this is a very good, okay, top tier conference in the world, PA rank A. If you want to work on, you simply work on streams, how to mine periodic patterns in data streams. So you do the work in this way. So this is how we carry out, okay? So now coming back to the model. So each model has some weaknesses. If you hit on the weakness, the entire model collapses. And that is where we try to solve it. Now, okay, I think now I told you. Now, what are the problems of a priori?
A priori use the transactional data,
Yeah.
but if I put the stream data, then it
No,
will
no,
collapse.
forget about the model. I'm talking about algorithm now. What is the limitation of the algorithm? Okay, I will tell you one thing, okay? I'm giving you some, okay? Assume I am giving you two frequent items, okay? A and B. How many C2 will be generated?
A and B.
I'm giving you two items. Now generate C2.
C2 means
I am giving you L1, L2, okay? L1, that is frequent items are A and B.
okay.
Generate C2. Just join them.
Okay. Yes.
How many?
Uh, it's 4.
How is it 4? Okay.
N square maybe.
I am giving you L1, okay? Frequent items. L1 is A comma B, A, B, okay? Now tell me C2. C2 is L1 X.
Times L1.
So A cross B is how much? You generate only one item set, AB,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Now I give you one more. Tell me C2.
A into BC.
What are the combinations of A, B, and C?
A B C N.
A, B. No, C2 means only two level, right?
Okay.
A,
Okay.
B,
Oh yes.
A, C,
A C B C.
B, C.
EC.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, if I give you from numbers, I give you 1, 2, 3, so on up to 1000. Okay.
Yeah.
Then C2 will be 1, 2, 1, 3, so on, right?
Yes.
So how many combinations it will be? 1000. There are 1000 items. 1000 C2 combinations. Okay. So what's happening here is explosion is happening. More candidates will be generated. Explosion will happen. Too many candidates will be generated. Okay. C1, C2, C3, too many candidates. That is the problem. Sometimes if you may run out of memory also. That many candidates will be generated in this process. Okay. That is first one. Too many candidates. Next one is a priori algorithm. How many scans are required for a priori? We have to scan multiple times, right?
Yes.
N times we have to scan.
Yes.
Okay. So what happens is, assume I am giving you 1 petabyte of data
Okay.
and ask you to perform a priori algorithm. Okay. Then you have to scan N times the petabyte of data, which is not practical.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the two drawbacks of a priori are, first one, huge number of candidates. This is the problem.
Okay.
The next one is you require multiple scans on the data. So these two are the fundamental limitations of the a priori algorithm. So what people have done it, can we make it better? Okay. So when they thought about it, people have come up with this solution. This is called frequent pattern growth. the fastest algorithm in many cases. Okay. Now we will look at frequent pattern growth. You should learn this one. A priori, just you have to know it, but you never implement a priori. Okay. It's very slow. This is the fastest one. The basic idea of frequent growth is very simple. Given the database, okay, compress it into a tree structure. And once we have a tree structure, we recursively mine the tree structure to mine all patterns in the data. This is the idea of FP tree. So now we look at how this idea is implemented. We learn it with the example. Okay, I have given you some text which you can go through. Okay, the first one is, okay, we have the database. Okay, we compress the data. First one is we scan the data and we find frequent items. Okay, this step is same as a priori, only first step. Okay, so once we find frequent items, okay, we sort them. Remember, we sort them in support descending order. We have to sort in support descending order. Clear? First is we scan the data and then we construct. Next we find frequent items and sort them in support descending order. Once we sort it, now what we do is we use only these items, okay, for mining frequent pattern. How do we do? Okay, first transaction is AB, right? So now AB. Oh, just a minute. Please note down these frequent items. Write down in a paper. A, B, C, D, E, F. Please note it down. Please let me know once you have written.
Okay.
Okay. So you have written, okay? Okay. Now let us look at the first transaction. A and B. A and B are both are frequent items, right?
Yes.
So what we do is we create the root node. We call this null as the root node, okay? On this node, we create the branch A, B, okay? And the support is 1, 1. Clear? This is not the TID, this is the frequency, okay? This is frequency. So A and B have appeared here. Next, we scan the next transaction, okay? So this is the first transaction, A1, B1. The next transaction is A1,
Yeah.
E1, EF1,
Yes.
okay? But you can see A1 are common here, right?
Yes.
So what we do is we merge them. So we say A, we merge the common nodes and increment the support count. By we sum up the support count. So A becomes 2. Okay. We merge these two. B is 1. E is 1. F is 1. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Merging. Okay. We scan the third transaction, CD. Okay.
CD.
C is 1. D is 1.
Yes.
Okay. Now we go to another transaction. The next transaction is ABH. Okay. You see here, A is 2, B is 1, right?
Yeah.
So when we insert this transaction ABH, what happens? A will become 3. Okay.
3. B2.
B2. And H is there. Okay. But H is not a frequent item, right? You have noted down in your paper.
Yes. Yes.
So we ignore H because we already know it is infrequent. Okay. So we remove this one. Okay. Okay. Now you tell me for CD. How does the tree look like after fifth transaction?
C2 and D2.
C2 and D2. Okay. Oh, nice. Now tell me for AC. AC, the sixth transaction.
Yes. A becomes 4 and D becomes 3. 3. Yes.
No. Which C becomes C? A is here. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
A does not have any child element here.
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay, then C1.
Yeah, you create a new node and make C as 1. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So A becomes 4, C becomes 1.
1. Yes.
Similarly, you do for AB. Now insert AB. What will be the value? A is already 4.
5.
Yeah.
A becomes 5 and B becomes 3.
Yeah. A becomes 5, B becomes 3. Okay. So now the entire database is compressed into a tree structure. Clear?
Yes, clear.
So this is how the tree looks at the end. Okay. This is called FP tree. This is how the tree looks. Okay. Once we have this tree structure, we maintain something called node links. Means you want to traversal the tree, right? So we maintain node links. So you can see how they are mapping. Okay.
Yeah.
All the elements got mapped. Okay. These node links are used for tree traversal. So any problem in understanding FP tree structure?
No.
Clear?
Yes.
FP tree structure is easy to understand, but mining of FP tree is the most hardest thing to understand. Okay, let's go through. I will go very slowly. So if you don't understand anything, please let me know. Also, please write down the structure. Please take, I will give you 5 minutes time. Write down the structure. Please write it down in a paper.
Okay, done.
Entire tree structure you have wrote it down.
I take a screenshot.
Okay. Others? No, better is to write it on a paper because you are going to work on it.
Okay.
So please write it on a paper. You have to work. Things become very complicated from now on.
Okay.
Please take it I think in MacBook maybe the shift. Please write it down. I give you 5 minutes time. So now the time is okay. 47. We will start again the class. Do not forget the support counts, okay? They are important. So complete, please write down the entire tree structure. Have you written? Okay. Now I'm moving now. Okay. So this is FP tree construction. Okay. We have converted the database into a FP tree structure. Now what we have to do is we have to recursively mine this FP tree to find all frequent patterns in the data. So how do we do that? Before going that, let me do let's do okay. I will ask you one question. How many transactions contain A, B, and D in the data? Can you tell it from the FP tree? Look in the FP tree and tell me how many transactions contain A, B, D.
One.
How many transactions?
One.
One. Any other answers? Okay, the answer is correct. The answer is 1. Okay, see, A has appeared 12 times in the data. Okay, A, B have appeared 8 times in the data.
Yes.
A, B, D has appeared only once in the data. Okay, this is
Yeah.
clear, right? Remember, okay? So the tail node will, so you should always go to the tail node. Okay, tail node. This is the tail node. D is the tail node, right? So
Yes.
this is the frequency. Okay, so remember this point. Now we are going into the mining phase. Okay, so let us take F. Okay, now what happens? Using F, we traversal the node links. Can you see it?
Yes.
So we start from F. Okay,
Yeah.
we go to. So what is the frequency of A, E, F?
A 1.
1. Okay, next one is E, F is 1.
1.
B, E, F is 1. Okay, we don't care about the remaining nodes. Okay, we only go through these nodes. Okay, so how does it look like here? Okay, we take the F. Okay, F is here, so the frequency of F is 1, right?
Yes.
So F1, C1, sorry, this is also 1 only, not 12. Okay, this is also E1, that is 12. Okay, so you simply push the frequency whatever you see to here.
Okay.
Now what we do is, so this is called paths containing F. Okay, I have written here FP tree containing only paths of F. Okay, once we have this tree, now what we do is we remove F. Okay, so what we do, we take F as a suffix item. Okay, so if you remove F, now what happens? This will become A1, E1, right? F is removed. Next is E1, F is removed. Next one is B1, E1. Okay, this is the tree. Okay, this is called conditional pattern base. So given the suffix item F, this forms the pattern base. Clear? Now,
Yes.
now you count how many times E has appeared. 1,
1,
2,
2, 3.
3.
Yes.
So the support count of E is 3. Okay. Similarly, support count of B is
1.
1. A is 1. It means F of A is 1.
Is 1. Yes. F of
F
B
of B is 1. F of E is
is
3.
Okay.
So these support counts are less than 3, right?
Yes.
So we prune AB. Okay.
Okay.
Now we have E. So F3 is a frequent pattern. Okay.
Okay.
Now what we do is we take F of E. Now you take the E and
Yes.
add it to F.
Okay.
So it becomes F of E now. Okay.
Okay.
So F of E has appeared in this one, right?
Yes.
A1. Here there is no parent. So nothing. Then we come here. B. B1.
Yes.
Clear?
Clear.
So we got this tree. Okay. Root node. When the suffix item is FE, the tree will looks like A1, B1.
Yes.
The support counts are 1 and 1, which are less than minimum support. Okay. So we stop for F. Okay. Then we go to the next item in the tree. Which is the next item in the tree?
F,
After F, which is the next item in the tree?
E. E.
Okay, yeah. Now do it for E. Someone just construct the tree. What are the branches for E?
Uh,
A E E. Then no, sorry. A B E. Then
Okay.
A E.
Hmm.
Then
yeah, cool.
only E. Then B.
B, correct. Okay, now you remove B and construct conditional pattern base. You do it on your paper.
Okay.
Do it for E. Okay, you have the structure, right? I will put the, okay, I am putting it here. This I have done it for F. Do it for E. Then I will show you the result.
Okay.
That's why I told you to write down the entire tree structure. Now do it for E. So I give you 7 minutes time. So 12 o'clock we will start again.
Can I see the other picture?
So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I will explain again. If you are going to work on pattern mining, okay, FP3 structure should be in your brain. Your brain should think like that. It's very important. That's why I'm giving you the exercise. Do it. Anyone completed?
Yes.
Okay, so which pattern have you generated for E?
At last, for E,
Hmm.
then I found A, B, and B.
How? What is the frequency of
For A frequency is 1 and for B frequency is 2.
the
For
minimum
E.
support is 3, right? I told you minimum support is 3. Here,
Oh,
minimum support is 3.
yes, yes.
So if minimum support is 3, then what are the patterns generated?
These two.
If minimum support is 3, then it comes AB and only B.
Okay. E does not have any other item. All the combinations of E have support count less than 3, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just strike them off and end. It means E will not generate any other pattern.
Oh,
If anything is less than 3, you ignore, because we are only interested in 3 or more, right? Support count.
yes, yes.
Okay. So this, it looks like this. Okay. When you take F as the suffix item, okay, one branch is AE1, the next branch is E1, next one is BE1.
Yes.
Okay, so E1, 2, 3. So E is 3, which will in turn generate the pattern. Okay. Now for E, you should have created one branch, A1, B1, A, B1. Did you got this branch?
Yes, yes.
You
I
got
see
this
that.
branch?
Yes,
You got this branch, right?
yes, yes, yes.
So the support of A is?
1.
No, 2. One
Yes.
is here, the other is
Oh,
here.
yes, yes, yes. Oh, it's 2.
A is
B
2,
also 2.
B is 2, which
Yes.
are less than 3. So you
Yes.
stop and you stop.
Yes.
Now go for D, okay? In your paper, look in your figure, okay, that you have drawn. B appears in 2 branches. One is AB1,
Yes.
the other one is A8, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here, no, there should be one more. Sorry, C should be there.
A, AB, and then C.
I think I have written this wrong. I have to check it. D,
A8.
D. One is this one.
And
Yeah, C6.
right.
Here is the C6.
But where is B? There is no B.
This is no. Correct. Just a minute. Let me change. This is not this. Okay. Now it's correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So the support of A is 1. The support of B is 1. The support of C is
Yes.
6. So C
Yes.
will generate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The same thing for B also. I have forgotten here, I think. Yeah. There should be A8 here. I don't know. This is the actual one. Why this was not copied properly here? I don't know. This should actually, this is the value that should come. When I copy pasted, things got messy in here. Okay, so this is the pattern. Similarly, you get one more. Okay,
Okay.
see, we have we have done for F, we have done for C, we have done for B, we have did for D, B, and C. We are not doing it for A. Okay,
Okay.
why? Because that is the only item remaining. Its parent is basically root node,
Okay.
so you don't need to do it.
Okay.
So we stop and we list all the frequent patterns here. Okay.
Okay.
So tell me how many scans we did in this database on the data, on the not on the tree, but I'm asking about on the data. On the database, how many scans did we do?
Right.
Maybe just one.
One. Think again.
One.
Sure. So when did you so what? When did you scan the database?
When we count the first one, first frequent items.
Yeah. Okay. That is one. Afterwards, how did you construct the tree? Did it happen magically? How did this happen? See, you scan the database and you have found frequent patterns, right? Frequent items.
Yes.
After finding frequent items, you are again scanning the database and constructing tree.
Yes.
Okay. So how many scans you have done? One scan is for finding frequent items. Okay.
Yes.
The second scan is for constructing FP tree. So how many scans you did?
2.
Yeah. So within 2 scans on the data, you can find all frequent patterns.
Okay.
Okay. So now you understood the power of FP growth.
Okay.
Yes.
I know.
So that is the impact. Okay.
So we minimize the scanning.
And also candidates. You are not generating any candidates here,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right? See here, no candidates are getting generated. Okay. This is the advantage. So you are not generating too many candidates. You are also reducing the number of database scans. So this is called FP growth or pattern growth technique. So any doubts in this one?
No.
Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one. So this algorithm can also be parallelized. Okay. I have given you the link in the website. Please go through it. Okay. I am running out of time. So I want to show you something interesting. Okay. Go to my website. Okay. I will give you the link. There are, go to datasets. Okay. You can find here all various datasets. Okay.
Okay.
In this, we are only working on transactional databases. Okay.
Yes.
So you can download these databases. Okay. And then I have given you the, This is the software we are building and we are planning to release it later. Okay, like we have this TensorFlow and all, right, from Google for machine learning. We don't have such a machine learning library for data mining, so we are planning to release it very soon. So currently we are supporting 17 algorithms, but next year we are planning to use. But anyway, okay, you go to, so if you go to traditional approaches that are sequential, you can find the algorithms, okay, FP growth, a priori, okay.
Yes.
You can have a look at this, how to code if you are interested in coding, which I highly recommend. Okay, then you can look at the code. Okay, but anyway, since we are talking about data mining, big data analytics, let us go through parallel algorithms. Okay, so in the parallel algorithm, you can see there is parallel FP growth. Okay, so we have given you the structure. Okay, so Python 3 or whatever is your program, Python version, parallel FP growth algorithm, you have to give input data. Input data is here. You download any of these data sets. Okay, that will be the input data. Then you have to give output folder name. So whatever the patterns are being generated, they will be kept in this output folder, and you have to give minimum support. Okay, in percentages, but actually we are slightly modified the code, so you have to give it only in the count now for simplicity. Okay, then number of machines means how many machines you want to split the data. Clear? Okay, actually we will now connect it to very high-end machines. Our lab machines, okay, if you type LS CPU, they have only 4 cores. Okay, so the real world data mining can't work on 4 cores. Okay, and if all of you wants to use those cores, the systems will crash. Okay, you can't have multiple Spark instances. So I am working on my machine. Okay, this is in Todai. This is my machine. Okay, I am going to work on this data on this machine, which I will show you. You implement these algorithms, okay, on your local machines. It's fine. Okay, so you can see. Okay, my machine has 2 CPUs. Okay, and each CPU has 36 cores. Okay, so in theoretical I have 72 computing cores. Okay, this is my Intel machine. Okay, clear? So you need, so if you have such a kind of architecture, then it works. If you search, you can type for LS CPU for our lab PCs, you will find only 4. It is very hard to work on. Okay, and you can also search. This is my MacBook. Okay, MacBook local. Okay, LS CPU. Oh, LS CPU is not supported here. Okay, my MacBook has 4 cores. I think you can see here. Here, can you see?
Yes.
Total number of cores. So I have 4 cores. But mine is suppose hyperthreading. So it is like 8 cores. Because mine is i7, okay? i7 is quad core. So hyperthreading. So it looks like 8 cores. Clear? So I can work on my machine. If you have good number of cores, you can work on, okay? Now let's come back to the problem. Where is parallel FP growth here? Here it is. I have the, okay, here is the data set, okay. So it will work. Just a minute. Let me. Yesterday night we had some problems, so I had copy. No. Okay. So Python parallel FP growth. Yeah. Yesterday I was preparing for this class and I messed up the Spark process. But anyway, now it's working. Done. Okay. Let us do the same thing. How many of you know time command? Do you know time command? Time.
So,
Actually, if you are running your algorithm, how much time your system, your program has took, you want to calculate. So if you want to calculate, you have to give time command. Especially in your research work, when you are projecting time, you have to use, okay? So note it down, okay? So when I have used 60 cores, this is the time I took, okay? Let me reduce it to 30. It took less time. Interesting. Then it should take more time.
it will be 10. Then me.
No, actually, if you decrease the course, the runtime should take high. But the thing is, Spark keeps every, yeah, you see, it's increased. Okay? If your cores are high, you will take less time. If your core, if you decrease the number of computing cores,
Yes,
the
there
runtime
are.
actually increases. This is exception. Sometimes that happens. But in general, that's why we do it for 5 times. I told you, like, you conduct the same experiment 5 times and take the average value. So that way you can solve. And now if I take only one core, okay, it means sequential, okay. You can see it is taking so much time. And you see it is taking time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's it. So that is the power of parallel computation. More number of cores, you not only achieve scalability and fault tolerance, but faster. Okay. Now my course, okay, it took 49 seconds, okay? So that's it. So you can download the code, okay?
Okay.
Run it on the datasets. In this code, we have to make a small change. Here we have used space as the separator. Yeah, here you can see we are splitting by space. We have to make it comma. Okay, I have to sign in. Okay, once I sign in, this is mine. Okay, you can follow my works and everything here. So if you just remember, you have to make this one comma.
Okay.
And then the entire algorithm works. Just copy paste and it keeps working. Okay. So this is free, so you can access it and you can learn it. Okay. This is Spammy PyKit. If you go to my website, okay, you can find the details here. Okay. Code and programs, this section. You have to go to my University of Tokyo account. I don't have still ISO account. So this is mine. So I will put it in the email later. Or you can simply remember this one, okay, udayrage.com. This will take you directly. So work on this, get some experience. If possible, change the code, do something good. Okay. I think the class is also over, and we will see you later again in the next courses. Okay. Thank you. So any doubts until now in any classes?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So you are able to understand both theory and practical. Is it?
Yes.
Okay. I will prepare one survey and try to send it to you so you can give your feedback. Okay. Thank you. Okay. See you again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.